That mean we're good?
No, that's a new feature. It's still
just to
buffering.
Louvre.
You are now live, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's call to order the City Council Workshop. This is a special meeting for May 25th. Before we do the roll call, the city attorney has an announcement.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. The procedures adopted for this meeting meet or exceed the standards set forth in the Governor's Order N-25-20, which states that the public meetings like this one can be held by teleconference to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Madam Clerk, please conduct roll call, and I ask the mayor to recognize me afterward as I have a few items to confirm for the record.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Here.
Councilmember Veros,
Here.
Councilmember Safar,
Here.
Vice Mayor Perkins,
Here.
Mayor Hudson.
Here, and recognize the city attorney.
Thank you. Based on the responses to the roll call, the record should reflect that all council members can hear the proceedings clearly. And if there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each council member is certain that persons representing themselves to be council members tonight are in fact council members. And seeing and hearing no objection, I will turn the meeting back over to the mayor, reminding you that all votes must be taken by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment is now open. Public comment at special meetings. The public is permitted to address the city council only on the item on tonight's agenda. That would be tonight's workshop agenda. If you decide to speak at this time, you will not be allowed to speak a second time after the appellant and applicant presentation. I don't think you have a choice on that. Are we saying you have to speak at public comment now, Martin? Am I reading this right? If you wish to speak to the item on the agenda, you have to do it during public comment?
Yes.
Okay. I can't even understand what I'm reading here for a minute. If you wish to speak at this time under public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone when it is your turn to talk and call upon a name. If provided, remarks are limited to, how many people do we have wishing to speak to this tonight, Christine? None?
I have not received any written comment. We do have 12 people in the audience. Majority of them are staff.
Okay, well, then we could do up to 3 minutes and they probably are staff. The speaker's microphone will be muted once the allotted time is expired. Do we have any written comments?
No written comment.
Okay, let's then ask one last time, anybody from the public? Let me check the participants wishing to speak. To the attendees, seeing no one raise their hands, let's go back, close the public comment. The workshop is the City of San Ramon's preliminary operating budget fiscal year 2021-22. Staff report by Eva Phelps.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. We wanted to come back at this workshop and give you an update on the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funding and just some proposed revisions because of that. Christine, if you can pull up the PowerPoint slide for me. Slide. So we did get some additional clarification about what the city is going to receive. As of this month and as of Friday, we actually found out the city's new allotment is 8.1 million instead of the 14.3, split over 2 years, 2 fiscal years. So we're working on that, and we have included that number, a partial number, into our numbers for next fiscal year. As you know, we already mentioned that we set up the special fund to track the funding, and all the information that we're getting is coming from the Secretary of Treasury, who issued that interim final ruling that established eligibility and things that weren't ineligible uses. And that went into effect immediately. However, the Treasury is receiving comments or accepting comments from the public and government agencies up until July 10th, because this has kind of thrown a lot of cities off a little. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, the eligible uses are to respond to public health emergencies or negative economic impacts to the agency. Also, you can use the funding to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. Also, government services can include, but not limited to, like maintenance or pay-go, building of infrastructure, including roads and some cybersecurity and things of that nature, health services, environmental remediation, school or educational service. And so there is some provisions for police. However, that has to be devoted to mitigating or responding to COVID-19 public health emergencies. Also, for hiring public sector employees to restore their workforce up to the pre-pandemic levels, which we're including some calculations for that. And all incurred expenses starts at the beginning of March 3rd going forward. The ineligible uses is we cannot replenish financial reserves such as rainy day funds or reserve funds. We cannot make payments to pension to pay down any unfunded liability. And if you've can't incur any debt prior to March 3rd. So if you did, it's not eligible to use these funds for. Next slide. So for the 1 year of ARPA funding is at 4.05 million. We're going to use in the budget 4 million of the ARPA funds based on our known eligible expenses, which is 1.5 million will be transferred to the infrastructure maintenance fund instead of coming out of the general fund as a contribution. So that's a savings of 1.5 on the general fund side. And then to restore workforce losses, that's about 1.9 million, and another 600,000 for just COVID related expenses such as cleaning, deep cleaning supplies and modifications for social distancing throughout all the facilities. So at the end of next fiscal year, we're projecting an ending fund balance reserve of 18.7 million or 37.2% of policy. Next slide. So just kind of recapping to include this information into our citywide budget, our expenditures are 23.8 million. The only change from that was that we included 1 million for the Doherty Valley Tree Management Program, CIP funded by the 2019 Certificate of Participation. And revenues are 121.5 million. The additional 2.3 is funding accumulated in prior years to fund the full cost of expenditures. So on our operating budget, as you know, as the list of funds that are included in the operating budget, general fund, Doherty Valley, the lighting and landscaping districts, stormwater, the GAD, and other small special revenue operating funds. So the expenditures are 85.5 million and revenues are 95.2 million. The general fund, the expenditures and revenues didn't change, but they're 55 million for revenue and expenditures. The thing that changed was the transfers. We had a transfer, net transfer in, we now have a net transfer out of 1.8 million, since we had to remove that whole $7 million out. Next slide. So here's a recap of the general fund transfers. So for the ARPA funds, we're using 2.5 going into the general fund, and then 1.4, which is the same of overhead from other funds. So that's the transfer in of 3.9 million in total. Our transfers out, the only thing that changed, I'm still showing 2.8 going into Doherty Valley, 2.1 for debt service, and the $0 is the infrastructure maintenance. I'm just showing that it's now being funded from the ARPA funds. And then 800,000 for other funding like Doherty Region Fire Authority, Street Smarts, and some insurance. So that totals 5.7 million. So the net effect of that is 1.8 million transfers out. So the general reserve policy requires contingency reserves to be maintained at the 36% level of estimated general fund expenditures in the Doherty Valley transfer. So that's about 18.1 million, which satisfies the contingency requirement. And so our reserves are actually estimated to exceed the policy. And the recap of that is showing that we're going to start the new year at 20.5 million. transfers out about 1.8, and then our projected ending fund balances is 18.7 million as of June 30th, 2022. So on the infrastructure maintenance, I just wanted to keep this slide in to show our beginning balance is 600,000 is being, the whole 1.5 million is still being funded, but it's being funded with ARPA funds. There's 1.6 million in the capital budget of spending from that's going to provide funding for capital projects. That would leave a balance in the infrastructure maintenance about 500,000 at the end of the fiscal year. So on the ARPA funds, the first payment, we're expecting it by the end of next month. That's about $4 million. And the second payment of $4 million, a little over $4 million, is expected in June of 2022. So 1.5 million will be transferred out of the special fund to the infrastructure maintenance. 2.5 million will be transferred to general fund. And at the end of the fiscal year, June 30, 2022, there still will be 4.1 million in the ARPA fund, so that when we get more information and when everything's completely finalized, we would have to come up with a plan as to how we're going to spend that based on what's the eligible uses. Next slide. So in final, the budget adoption steps, we're looking to adopt the proposed budget on June 8th. So you will get in your packet a revised budget, because I know the last workshop we gave you a preliminary, so you'll get another one with all the updated numbers. So included in that, the budget adoption resolution will include the appropriations for 21-22 with any adjustments directed by City Council as part of this review. Also, the approval of the appropriation limit as required by state law, and authorized to carry over unspent capital project funds in the CIP. So that is the end of my presentation. I can take any questions that you may have. So it's a short, kind of sweet, well, I don't know, bittersweet presentation, but if you have any comments, I would like
Vice
to.
Mayor Perkins put his hand up first. Then
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Sabina if she's got anything as the chair, because I think you guys are meeting tomorrow.
Yeah. Do you have an understanding of why the total went from 14 million to 8 million? Do you have an understanding of why that was?
We don't know why it changed dollar amount, but we know that we were included as a non-entitlement city, which the formula is based on population. And then when the numbers came out, were readjusted, we found out that we're listed as an entitlement city, which the formula is based on all kind of different variables. So that's all we know. And we're hoping to get more information.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a big difference. A $6 million
Yeah.
drop.
Okay. Well,
Sounds like a regional committee.
yeah, it's kind of like arena numbers, right? But Dave, but opposite. Okay, thank you.
Bina, go ahead, Joe, before you could.
Just quickly, I think that it's important that the council recognizes that, we've been chasing the understanding of this and we're still trying to understand things. But what's significant here is that where we weren't going to be drawing any funds from the fund balance, we are now doing so to maintain the level of services. So we easily meet the minimum reserves, as Eva pointed out, but we also are, as you saw on the slide, drawing down from that to make those numbers reconcile. Whereas if we had $7 million coming in, that would have been a different story, and that was the original thing. So I just wanted to point that out to the council to ensure that you were aware of it. But this is a balanced budget within the reserve guidelines.
Yeah, and we won't know till September, October what our end of year 2021 actuals are. We're still working on based on budget, not actuals. We've got months to go before we figure that part of it out.
Well,
Thank
as
you.
you remember in the policy, in the reserve policy, we did change it to estimated expenditures. So when we did the mid-year, that was the last time we were able to give you estimates. So we're using estimates instead of budget because that's the most recent numbers.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Eva, for just chasing this around, and it hasn't been static, and it's changed around, and still being able to balance it and making sure that our reserves are maintained. Hopefully, after this year, obviously it is a year like none other. As we go into next year, we can see our revenue coming back. I mean, I'm already seeing city center full. People are going out. I think people are going to start. They've been locked up too long, so hopefully some of that revenue will start coming back, and some of the new stores coming online as well. So fingers crossed for that.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you. Really appreciate all the work you're continuing to do to make sure we are balancing the budget.
Oh yeah. Scott, put your hand down. Mark, you're first, then Sridhar.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank you, Ava, for just hanging in there with all the changing guidance, and seems like it's a roller coaster ride. You had a bullet in there about you can't replenish the rainy day funds, yet it seems like that's what we ought to be doing. I don't quite understand the logic. If we expended some of our reserves and rainy day funds for COVID related expenses, it just seems like it's right up that alley. But having said that, I might have missed it, but I didn't hear you address whether an eligible expense or an eligible use includes the loss of revenue from services, or no fees, or are different, from parks. We didn't get any revenues from a lot of the, contracts and activities and things like that. Is that one of those things that's going to be worked out for the next round for next year, or is that included in this year's round of the 4.1, 4.05?
Well, we haven't included loss of revenue because the ruling wasn't clear. It actually said it's not based on revenue loss. Even there's a calculation for how we come up with a number of what we lost in revenue. So we're waiting to get more clarification on that. However, we did include loss of staffing. So if there was positions that we had in the budget or was projecting in the budget, and we had to, at the last minute when we had to do the last year's budget process, we removed those fundings out. So we were able to replenish all of that, which included some parks positions. It included a lot of the temp staffing. So those types of expenditures we did include in there as workforce losses.
Yeah, and I get that. That makes sense there, but well, I guess there's really nothing we can do. We're going to follow the rules, whatever the implementing guidance is. But it just seems to me that some of that lost revenue ought to be eligible, regardless. Especially if they include other things that are eligible, such as infrastructure improvements and things like that may not even be COVID related, it seems, but yet we can't include things that are directly COVID related in terms of loss of revenue. I just seems like a little bit of a disconnect, but maybe there's not a lot we can do about that, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the disconnect for all of us cities, because we were under that impression going along, even with webinars that we attended through the state and through the League of California Cities. Everyone was on the same page, and then all of a sudden we were hit with this ruling from this Treasury.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sridhar?
Thank you, Eva, for presentation and working on this. Once again, with a balanced budget. So one question regarding this 0.6 million cleaning and social distancing, is there any, may know little more information, what kind of expenditure it will be?
Can you repeat yourself one more time?
I just want to understand a little more details on 0.6 million cleaning and social distancing. Is like,
oh, the 600,000 we included.
Yeah.
That was just a kind of an estimate of what we know, some of the janitorial service that we are having to do, deep cleaning and making sure that all the staff is safe. So we've kind of had to reconfigure some things for social distancing and things of that nature. So that was an estimate of what we think we're going to spend going forward and what we've spent since March, because we can't go back any further than March 3rd.
Okay, so this is for
So
future
this is an estimate of what we think we'll spend for going forward.
going forward. Okay. And also this, I think I already got answer about 1.9 million to restore workforce.
Yes, and most of that was temp staffing from the Parks and Recreation, because that was totally shut down.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would just make sure I'm not on mute. You guys will sit over there and let me keep going. Two things really, as far as the tying to COVID, your infrastructure, I don't have a hard time with that because you have level of service and it's declining every year, and it's tied to the MPOs. I mean, the level of service is back through Metropolitan Planning or the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and they like money too, so I could see where they somehow would be pushing or allowing you to do that, a lot of bridge maintenance, et cetera. The one thing I would ask that I do want to know, Eva, the reserves at 6/30/22 are projected to be 18.7. What was the projection for 6/30/21? I keep thinking it was 18.3.
On the slide 12, it's 20.5. We're projecting to end this fiscal year at 20.5.
Okay, that's the latest, but when we were doing this exercise a year ago, wasn't it like 18.3? Well,
every year is going to be different based on what the expenditures or what the budget is. So
Yeah.
We may have been lower or could have been higher. And then and then the calculation changes too, because it's always looking back 1 year as for expenditure. So if your expenditures are higher, then what you have to have in reserves is going to be a little bit higher.
Yeah, I would just say that I don't have a problem voting for this budget. We're ready to go. My concern has been the same for the last 10 years. We started out 50% was the minimum reserves. We got to where we were going under 50%. So 40% became the minimum reserves. Then we got to where it was under 40%. Well, 36% will be the minimum reserves. And the problem in a nutshell is when you reduce reserves every year, they're not really reserves. And we know where the problem is, and I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm going to start picking on Doherty Valley to pick up this funding shortage, or 18.1 is going to be 1.81. It just, if you go down and down and down and down, eventually the number gets pretty darn small. So I'm not going to do it this year. I'm too lazy, and COVID is absolutely the craziest thing that we've ever had to do with budgeting, next to, I think it was 207 or something like that. It was pretty nasty too, but it's something to keep in mind. The reserves have reduced every year for at least 10 years. And somehow we have to reverse that. I thought we had done it this year, but thank you, whoever got the other 7 million that we were going to get. Other than that, somebody in the attendance wants to speak, and we said, no, they were supposed to speak in public comment. So we're not going to open it up. Is there anyone else from the city council that has a comment or statement? I could read Sabina like a book. She doesn't even have to hit her. Go ahead, Sabina.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what we need to focus is on our revenue. So we, the higher our revenue is, the percentage keeps going up. So maybe set a goal for what number you want, and then we aim for that revenue. For me, I think that's part of it. At the rate we're growing, we're just not, I don't think we're catching up to our revenue at the speed that we're growing as a city. So that to me is I think where we need to continue to focus.
Actually, I think we're doing pretty good. I really want to find out, and this isn't just a conversation with you and I, but I really want to find out what that census number is. And maybe it's because, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. But Scott, you were here. when that number came in and we increased our residents by 7,000 people, and there were only 2 cities that went up, it was like, whoa, what a difference a day makes. And I still do not understand how we can go from 85 to 83 and be building homes, but we're going to find out. So we'll see where that goes, whether the property tax is going to hit the numbers. And I think you are right on that. And you just nailed it with City Center. I mean, everybody go down to LB Steakhouse and just eat so that we can get the sales tax up. But it's coming. I mean, I don't know what else other than you take projects this big and you start saying you want to build. I mean, somebody plops down a $500,000 check. It adds up pretty quick. 500 here, 500 there. So anyway, Mark, go ahead. You're muted. You're muted, Mark.
Got it. I just want to thank just the whole staff for, I know we're looking at this from a city-wide perspective, but just reviewing the documentation and trying to focus on District 2 in particular. I see a lot of items for District 2, and I appreciate that. There's a lot of landscape and lighting stuff, pavement improvements, the senior center, Forest Home Farms, Rancho Phase 2, improvements over at Cal High with the tennis courts and the pool, the Iron Horse Trail, things like that, I just see in the district, and many more things. But thank you for including District 2. And I know, again, I know this is a citywide budget, but I just want to put that out there that we all have our own district interests as well. And I think you did a good job in spreading the wealth here for everybody. Thank you.
It's the power of 2, Mark. And I'm reading public comments here, and it says, if you decide to speak at this time, you will not be allowed to speak a second time. So I'm guessing that we've got to open this up to the public. Where's City Attorney? Are you hiding or you're not?
Well, you don't have to. You did. Did it say so on the agenda? I did not see.
I thought it did.
I'm sorry.
I read it as, that's the way I read it. That's why I stopped when I did. I go, no, that's not right. If you decide to speak at this time, that's public comment, you will not be allowed to speak a second time after the appellant or the applicant's presentation. It leads me to believe.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
Public comment is only on this agenda once as item 2.
Yeah.
There is no other public comment on this agenda.
No, that's what I'm agreeing. But when I went back and read it myself, I go, that's confusing. And I'm under the impression we should let this person speak.
No, it doesn't say that. It says public
Scott,
comment at special meetings.
Okay, stop a minute. I'm reading what I read. It's an annotated.
You're okay. You're reading the annotated agenda, which you have the option of allowing the speaker or not allowing the speaker.
Yeah. And I think we better let her speak or she's going to get even with me.
Well, Mr. Mayor and the attorney, I disagree in that the agenda as published and available to the public has call to order, public comment, workshop, adjournment. And the mayor's annotated copy is not the official agenda posted to the public.
That is correct. And as such, the mayor does have the discretion to open the floor even after the presentation. That is his call.
Let me make this clear. Everything you're saying, Scott's absolutely right. But some dumb mayor read this thing word for word without reading it before he read it. And it does lead people to believe, and I made it publicly stated, that there will be an opportunity. Since I only have one person for the public, I will do it this time, but I will make sure that at special meetings, only during public comment can you comment on the item that's on the agenda. Does that sound good this time? Let it slide one time.
Thank you.
Okay. Christina, would you put in call in user 1? You get 3 minutes.
Hello, Mayor, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mayor Huston, thank you so much. And going forward, I'll make sure I'm on time. I missed everything. I just wanted to put in a comment that I want to make sure our police funding is robust and is strong. Recently, we have observed a lot of civil unrest in Oakland, shooting in broad daylight in the afternoon because they have defunded their police department to a certain extent. And we have also witnessed what happened in Danville. There are evil out there. So I don't have any problem. I do live in Doherty Valley. Whatever that is my taxes to pay, I'm happy to pay. Although Council Member Armstrong just mentioned about Cal High, I thought that that's the school district's responsibility. So it might be a good idea. I missed the staff presentation. So, but if I was present, I would definitely ask the staff to distinguish or differentiate what improvement was paid for by our city and what improvement was paid for by the school district. And thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you so much, Mayor Hudson.
And thank you. And thanks, Scott, for calling that out on that. I got it. It's just when you're reading this stuff and you go, uh-oh, it's a little bit different when you didn't read it before you read it. Anyway, and I know where Member Armstrong's going, but last comment to you, Mark, and then I'll ask Eva, you don't need anything other than that. You don't need a motion or anything, correct? This is an update.
I don't need a motion.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Mark.
I know we don't necessarily need to respond directly to public comment, but I'd like to clarify my comment on Cal High.
You were right.
Which was, I was talking about the Olympic pool and also the resurfacing of the tennis courts as major projects and CIP items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we need anything else? Everybody chimed in as much as they want to chime in. There's nothing new that's going to scare anybody when Eva says, are you going to approve this? So we've got a 3-2 vote. Got somebody that, damn, Joe, you didn't even flinch when I said that. Any last words before we end this thing? Seeing none, then we will adjourn until we don't adjourn unless we need another workshop. And if so, the special meeting is adjourned. We will see you all at 6:30 for the Northwest San Ramon Geologic Hazard Abatement District meeting. And then 6:45 and then 7 o'clock. Good night.